Okay. Almost broke my. Good evening. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience, and welcome to the meeting of the Skokie Plan Commission for March 2nd, 2023. First order of business, I will call the roll. Commissioner Osley,
Here.
Commissioner Manchella,
Here.
Commissioner Schock,
Here.
Commissioner Franklin,
Here.
Commissioner Gavanyahu.
Here.
Commissioner Lakani has resigned her seat. Commissioner Berman. Here. Commissioner Matei.
Here.
And I'm here. So we have 8 members absent, present, and 1 seat vacant. But we do have a quorum. Okay. Let me start out by saying that in the last couple of meetings, we've listened to a lot of people talk about how their feelings are on affordable housing. I think I speak for the commissioners and myself to say that we have learned a lot, and I think there's more to be learned from these sessions. I feel that we need another session to continue these talks because there's so much to learn and there's so much to take in that we just can't get it all in. So I am making a motion to continue this discussion for one more meeting. We'll have a discussion tonight, but we're going to add another meeting to it to get further input. So, do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Osley. Call for a vote. Commissioner Osley,
Yay.
Commissioner Manchella,
Yay.
Commissioner Schock,
Yes.
Commissioner Franklin,
Aye.
Commissioner Gavanyahu,
Aye.
Commissioner Berman,
Aye.
Commissioner Matei,
Aye.
and I'll vote aye. Okay, so we will have a continuation of the talks at our March 16th meeting, is that correct? Okay, and tonight, we will go over some of the recommendations that the staff and commissioners have come up with. And after we talk, I will open the floor to anyone who wishes to come up and give a comment or make a question. So, tonight, we have, okay, ready with the presentation? I believe Commissioner Osley is going to talk about one of our goals. We call it Goal A.
Yeah, so I'm going to start by being a dad for a moment and say that, I almost relate the conversation that you just introduced and the idea that we need to continue this discussion with, my recollection of our family trips that we take, which we have the blessing and the pleasure to be able to do that. They're typically road trips because I have 3 children and my wife and I pile in the car with them. And so, at some point we think about where we're going, we make some decisions along the way, and eventually we end up in the car and we're off on the road and we're trying to get someplace, and it's probably someplace we haven't been before. And you get to that point in the journey where you realize you're in a different place and you're not surrounded by your familiar surroundings, and you're committed to the journey, but as you said, you're learning along the way. And I feel like that's essentially where we are. We're committed to this journey. We've started the trip. We meaning all of us residents and here in Skokie. And so this first goal, I think, relates to that ongoing conversation, the idea that we're going to continue to try to work to have the best community that we can, which is inclusive of goals and accommodations and policies and procedures to help support affordable housing within the community. And so that's some of the language that I think is emphasized here. We've talked a lot about the existing housing stock, how some of it is a little bit older, but it still has and should continue to have value if we work to preserve it, if we work to protect it, and along the way we try to create the opportunity to improve it. And I think there are a number of ideas that have been promoted along with those concepts. First and foremost, in many respects, is to create opportunities and vehicles for individuals to repair their properties to the extent that they are homeowners, and or landlords who need also sometimes support and help maintaining their properties so that they can be at an appropriate standard for the people who rent there. So that's one of the things that we want to commit ourselves to continue to explore is ways to help support the people who have ownership of or a key stake in our existing housing stock to be able to continue to keep it, preserve it, protect it, and improve it in a way that it will be available to people to live in and enjoy. And so there's some specific concepts there that we will continue to evaluate related to how do you help fund, how do you help fundraise, and how do you help finance in certain respects programs to do that. And beyond that, then you talk about maintaining a registry of the vacant homes, finding new ways of identifying vacant properties or derelict properties if they are, owned by individuals who are not appropriately caring for them, but also maintaining the relationship with developers and banks to the extent that they have access or control over some of these properties. And the last piece of that, which is particularly important to me, is code enforcement. We're highlighting here rental units, but it's code enforcement that is sensible, that is effective, but not overbearing or overburdensome, but is right-sized and appropriate for the individual use cases, which means that there will be times where the existing codes will need to be reviewed and potentially revisited. And I think I will also say that when you go through a process of revising code, sometimes that means that not everyone is thrilled with those revisions, because revisions, like any regulation, do put walls or boxes around certain behaviors. But that's something that we have committed to try and explore and evaluate, and ultimately we think there will be benefits related to, again, the preservation and the protection of the affordable housing stock in the village of Skokie.
Well, Commissioner Owens, I believe some of the code enforcement is for the protection of the renter, is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Johanna, yes, any questions?
So what the codes needs to be changed?
Well, we can go through the code.
Oh, okay.
We're not gonna do that now, but what he's suggesting is that we look into the codes and see where we can, modify them. Okay. Johanna, Nyden? She's gonna tackle gold B.
So this is one that most urban inner ring communities probably strive for, like Skokie, where you have a good mix of employers, different types of jobs, different points of income levels, making sure that the people who live here have the opportunity to work here, but also people who might work here have the opportunity to live here when people have shorter distance to travel. Their household costs are lower because transportation costs are lower. We have less vehicle miles traveled on our roads, less emissions, lots of good reasons to keep people local. And then also potentially work with major employers. I know this isn't uncharted territory, but look at working with major employers and seeing how to understand the dynamic for why people may or may not want to live here, and how we can maybe open up opportunities for people who work here to live here too.
Okay. Very good. All right, on to goal C. Now, establishing an inclusionary housing ordinance. Basically, we need to modify, look at what we have now. I know there's existing regulations for, handicap, ADA, and other things, but we have to look at housing for, like, people who work in Skokie, generally, people who work in Skokie can't afford to live in Skokie. They have to travel for hours, just to get to the workplace. So we have to figure out a way of, providing for them. And then we're talking about code changes, as Peter had talked about, and also to include in the code change, especially in our our zoning is the, what they call ADUs, or accessory dwelling units. And these are little units that people can have for, let's say, an in-law or a senior or a parent or even a grandparent who may want to live in Skokie with the family, yeah, live affordably rather than forcing them into other communities or a nursing home. Then implement the housing demolition fee, kind of look at that. The cost of building a new house is also the cost of demolishing an existing building. And then we have to look at underutilized parcels that have gone vacant, unused. Is there a way of repurposing them? And perhaps, do a zoning survey to see where we can change some of the zoning, look at some of the buildings that need to be, repurposed. Basically, Skokie is landlocked, and we have nowhere to expand, so we have to look inward to our current, land stock, or land banking is an option for the village too. And then, working with the developers to the amount of units required in the new development. That has to be discussed, create an ordinance to let the developers know that we're looking for a certain percentage of affordable housing in their project. And then look at the income levels. We have to decide where we want to base our, the medium income percentage. Some people are advocating 60-40 as a sliding scale or a set scale of 80%. So we're gonna look at that. And then there's the fee in lieu of option. Basically, I know Evanston has a 15% requirement for affordable housing, but in actuality, it's only 5%. Because 10% they can buy out. Basically buy out 10% of it, put that money to an off-site fund, for use by the village or by the city of Evanston. And so, when people say to me, well, Evanston has 15%, I say, well, it doesn't really mean 15%, it's only 5%. So, and then incentives for on-site units, how do we provide for that? One way of doing that is to reduce the parking. Maybe give them another, add a little more height to the building. Things like that we can look at. So those are the things we need to, kind of modernize in our comprehensive plan. Erica, would you please go over goal E for us?
Sure. So, the
E,
state,
rather. I'm sorry, go ahead.
the state, the county, and the village all have different requirements as far as how landlords and tenants are supposed to deal with each other. When the Cook County tenant landlord, sorry, it's the exact opposite from Chicago. When the Cook County tenant landlord ordinance was enacted, there was an option for cities, towns, and villages that had their own provisions to opt out of the CTLO. Skokie didn't have that, so we are encompassed in the CTLO. The state has certain requirements as far as what the landlords can do with regards to security deposits. The CTLO has certain requirements as to how landlords and tenants have to deal with each other in terms of notices and fines and so forth. But Skokie has the bear with me one moment, has a crime-free addendum requirement for neighborhood integrity, and that is something that is above and beyond what the state and the county require. And we can also look at other things like that to enhance living in Skokie and making sure that any changes that we make to affordable housing also considers the neighborhood and anything that the neighborhood needs in order for people to feel safe and comfortable and integrated amongst the population that's there.
Thank you. Yeah, Peter, again, please, with Goal D.
I guess the one thing that I wanted to say about Goal D was really sort of to bring us back to where I started, which is that we're on a journey. And so we've committed to continue our work, as indicated at the start of the meeting, by having an additional conversation with this group, by continuing to engage with the partners who've come forward. We've had representatives from Cook County. We've had representatives from community development corporations. We've had representatives from community interest groups, which I see some of whom are here again tonight. So we want to continue to engage with the concerned parties. We want to continue to do research to evaluate the actions that ultimately will be recommended. And then the last piece is that, to accept the fact that this is an ongoing journey. This is not something that will be solved in one meeting or in one night or with one ordinance. And so it's an open conversation that we intend to continue together and in cooperation and in partnership with the people who are here tonight and the other people in this village and the other people who have come forward in support of our collective journey.
Thank you. Okay. Any closing remarks or questions? Commissioner Matei?
So I feel that we really need to understand
Turn on your mic.
understand the burden that real estate taxes play in real estate. Typical house in Skokie probably pays around $8,000 a year, $7,500 in that range. You're talking about $650 just in real estate taxes. Add in homeowners insurance. It is a big component. Look at your tax bill. Elementary school district's going to be number 1. High school's going to be number 2. Cook County's going to be number 3. Village of Skokie will be number 4. Plays a huge role in rent. That doesn't get passed on to anybody but the renter. So understand how real estate taxes really impair our ability to be able to provide affordable housing. We talk about vacancies, and this is just a little sidebar. Take a little storefront on Oakton Street. You're trying to run a little small business, and people say, why don't we have businesses there? I'll tell you, a small storefront on Oakton Street in Skokie pays about $35,000 a year in taxes. It's about $2,900 a month for that business owner. Very difficult. You got to sell a lot of hammers or hamburgers to make a go of it. I do believe this is a very important issue. It affects our seniors. It affects our lower income earners. I do believe that we should engage a community survey and get a wide swath of our village's opinion on how we handle this.
Okay.
So I would motion that we would do that, and that isn't engage our groups, concerned groups, bring together some committees, let's put together a survey, and let's survey the entire community.
Would you consider just making that as a recommendation?
I will do, if that works for you, I'm fine with a recommendation.
Okay. Very good.
I'd like to
Yes.
add an additional component to that, and that is to make sure that property owners are getting the proper exemptions that they're entitled to, homeowners exemptions, senior exemptions, disability exemptions, because I have seen so many people miss their exemptions, and it makes their property unaffordable because they're missing money that they could otherwise be using in other ways. And so if we're going to survey, the members of the community, we should also be assuring that they're getting the exemptions that they're entitled to. It's
I think
a-
that's a great suggestion to be added, Erica.
Okay.
So, point
Yes.
of clarification, would you like to attempt to author a statement now, which would effectively be goal D? Or would you like to make a motion that we take as a task the responsibility of developing that language and presenting it as goal D in a subsequent meeting?
I would perhaps favor more of a recommendation than a motion. Then later on, we can motion the finished product.
And it should have a committee put together to help with this. I do believe that we should use a professional survey organization. And obviously, to your point, Peter, staff would be largely responsible for orchestrating the committee and the work of that development of that survey.
Okay, any other comments?
Just a quick question. So
Yes,
how
Commissioner.
does this become a recommendation then? I would agree with what Ross is saying. How do we make sure as we leave here tonight that that's actionable as a recommendation?
Well, again, we're gonna have another meeting, so by then, I think we can better have something more solid in the form of a list of recommendations or what we think should be done to, whatever our to be sent down to the board. So we have one more meeting to sit that, okay? Yes, go ahead.
So the board's direction was for the plan commission to provide policy recommendations. So some of these things that are listed under bullets that we've talked about are strategies or activities that give examples of recommendations. So the goals were in a sense meant to be broad. They're not supposed to define the work that we're going to do. I think everybody in this room would agree we want to do most of the things that are in goal A: preserve, protect, and improve Skokie's existing affordable housing. So since what I'm taking notes and look forward to feedback. If you all can give me a little bit more feedback on the various goals, then I can, if we want to leave them in, take them out, that can help frame what you want to do in terms of moving forward for your recommendation, and including a recommendation within the goal statement which I think maybe might be a little bit more of goal E: study and assess the ongoing supply and demand. Maybe that just needs to be a rework of goal E, and maybe it needs to be an A, and then A becomes B. And we can roll up our sleeves and revise this. But the board's expecting a recommendation, and if we could give some broad statements, then we can roll up our sleeves and do that work with those items. I think that would be a helpful way to start.
I think one consideration that was brought up in a plan commission case a couple months ago, a developer was proposing a 300-unit dwelling, apartment building at Linder and Toohey. And after talking with the local school board, the local school board actually came out and asked them to reduce the number of 2 bedrooms in his project, because the school district could not afford any more students coming into the system presently. So that's what the developer did. He reduced the number of 2-bedroom units. So that's something to consider, the influx that families have on local school districts. Okay, any other questions? Okay. At this time, I will open the floor to anyone in the audience who have discussion, but I'm asking if there's a Mr. Niger, is he here tonight? Please, would you step up? Step up to the microphone. And your group, you represent, when you get to the microphone, could you give us your name and the group that you represent?
My name is Ethan Nagar. I'm with the North Shore Barrington Association of Realtors.
Okay, we have asked for a little time for a presentation, which I'm granting you.
So, hello, everyone. My name is Ethan Nagar. I'm a member of NASBAR's board, North Shore Barrington Association of Realtors, and I'm a longtime Skokie resident. Our organization supports housing policies that will produce a diversity of housing options for everyone.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I need to swear you in.
Okay?
Since you're giving a testimony on behalf of a group.
Sure.
Okay? Raise your right hand, please. Do you affirm that the testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth to help you?
I do.
Thank you.
Our organization supports housing policies that will produce a diversity of housing options for everyone. That includes affordable housing, but is not limited to affordable housing. Right now, we need more housing. We need housing of every type and price point because there's a huge shortage. According to Freddie Mac, the national shortage is no less than 3.8 million units. As a whole, Illinois trails every other Midwestern state on housing, with Ohio and Indiana issuing 50% more than Illinois. This is impacting home buyers here in Skokie as well. Despite increasing mortgage rates, we have less than 6 weeks of available inventory, an all-time low. Renters are also feeling the pain. The Chicago metro region is estimated to be 48,000 rental units short of demand. I bring these points to reinforce that we don't need policies that will hinder development or penalize homeowners. We want to be a partner in creating policies that will help add all types of housing, including affordable housing units. Unfortunately, many of the policies you plan on discussing can lead to developers finding more friendly communities that offer a safer investment. Start with incentives for providing affordable units, allow for full use of properties through ADUs, accessible dwelling units, by right. Do not penalize neighborhoods with demolition taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kniger. Okay, anyone wishing to speak, please come up. There is a sign-in sheet on the table over here. If you give us your name and address, we'll keep notifying you as to when the meetings will be. Good evening, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, can we have your
Thank
name and address?
Robert Schwartz, longtime resident of Skokie. We own a single-family house on the 8,000 block of Costner, just north of Oakton. Lived there for many years. It's a nice, quiet neighborhood of all single-family houses. My concern with this affordable housing program, what type of people are you going to bring into this program? What are the socioeconomic and demographics? Are they coming from outside of Skokie, or will they be Skokie residents? There have been problems in the past with Section 8 housing, in particular certain areas of Skokie. You can research that through the Skokie police website and the Skokie crime statistics. I believe there's enough affordable housing through the Section 8 program. We don't need another one. I'm concerned that you want to break up our neighborhoods by bringing in low income into a middle and upper middle class environment of single family dwellings.
Well,
I
sir,
would-
what we're trying to do is,
Sir, I'm sorry,
I'm
what?
sorry, excuse me for interrupting, but we're trying to establish a criteria for creating and maintaining affordable housing.
Right, I understand
Okay.
affordable housing, but you have to define the economic basis for affordable housing. And you have to vet the people who are going to be dwelling in this affordable housing in terms of their socioeconomic and demographic backgrounds. We don't want to see Skokie broken up as happened in some other communities. I would urge you to reject this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, please? Please come up. Give yourself a little workout.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sue Lulbach. I work at Connections for the Homeless. We're based in Evanston, but we serve many people from Skokie as well as from 40 other municipalities in north suburban Cook County. I am really encouraged with the ideas for a plan that you've put forward. I think it's really exciting. I think it's real straightforward, very, very practical. I would like to suggest that, you know, as you're doing further research, you also consider ways to provide some additional subsidies, because the need for affordable housing in Skokie as well as the rest of the region is really, really high. The people who need affordable housing already live in Skokie. They're already here. They're part of the fabric of the community. They're just living in housing that they can't afford. And building housing is going to take a long time, and people need help right now. So, you know, the gentleman who spoke before me was talking about vouchers, Section 8 vouchers. There are not enough of those, and there are not enough landlords who accept them. That's a hugely beneficial program, and Skokie really needs more subsidies like that as well. So thank you.
Thank you for bringing it up. That wasn't brought up by us tonight and kind of overlooked, but thank you for bringing it up.
Sure.
I want to speak to the people who keep talking about affordable housing and who's living in the affordable housing. And I want to say that from the time I was 1 month old until 8.5, I lived in affordable housing. And it was a really neat little development. There aren't cornfields here to plow under, which is what my affordable housing was built on. We had swimming pools in one of the developments, these affordable housing developments that had a happy hour. I could walk to my friend's house when I was 5 by myself, which was like 3 buildings away. So I want that kind of language to stop. I'm sorry.
Oh, excuse me, could you give us your name again, please?
Sorry, I thought everyone already knew me. Lauren Grodnicki.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Gail Schechter, 9033 B. Keating. I'm speaking on behalf of Skokie Neighbors for Housing Justice. We have just a very brief statement that we pulled together, if it's okay that I read it.
Sure.
Great.
If you have a copy of it to give us for a record, we'll take that too.
I will, thank you. So, for the past,
Gail,
yeah,
I think I need to swear you in, since you're gonna give a statement.
Oh.
Okay. Since you're giving an official statement.
okay.
Okay. Do you affirm that the testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. These past 6 weeks have been the start of a meaningful conversation led by the village of Skokie to recognize as well as develop solutions that address the housing crisis for low and moderate income residents and home seekers. This affordable housing policy discussion was prompted last December, at least in part, by Westfield LLC's announcement that it would apply for approval to create a luxury 350-unit self-contained rental, quote, community in Old Orchard Mall, the biggest revenue generator in the village. Old Orchard stores provide hundreds, if not thousands, of low-wage and seasonal jobs. Since July 2022, the village has used the blighted economic zone designation to justify an additional 1% sales tax on customers there. In effect, the village has freed up Westfield's funds for mall renovation to spend on other lucrative investments like this rental complex. So consumers, many from Skokie and neighboring areas, would be subsidizing this upscale, amenity-filled housing isolation bubble. We would posit that the question before the village is this: why do we not make a stand for affordable housing and use our leverage to create a much-needed mixed-income development in the mall? And if not here, where? What has become clear through these weeks of inquiry is that Skokie must lead with an overarching vision of an inclusive community. Ironically, at the same time that this affordable housing policy inquiry has been underway, the village has approved at the Plan Commission or board level at least 3 developments that serve single or 2-person households, affluent households. Instead of moving us toward an equitable Skokie that accommodates people of all incomes, abilities, sizes, and backgrounds in an integrated village, these developments only exacerbate the very inequities we are seeking to eliminate. Skokie Neighbors for Housing Justice is a grassroots group of Skokie residents. We reiterate the call for a unified housing policy which meets human needs and promotes community. Skokie deserves no less, and we outlined options in a memo which we gave to you at the February 2nd meeting. And the bottom line is that the free market will never serve people with lower incomes. Public policies are essential to ensure that new residential development will accommodate people whom the market leaves behind. The village has a duty to leverage its power to put its people first. Only then will the village be stable economically and racially as a community we all value. So we urge the Plan Commission, we thought this was going to be the meeting where you put something forward for the 20th. With that in mind, we urge the Plan Commission to present to the village board with the following 3 immediate actions. 1, establish a proactive, empowered housing commission with the authority to review or evaluate new or mixed income proposals for how the village meets needs, or how they meet village needs, their contribution to a balanced housing supply, and their enhancement of the community's quality of life and the public good, and make recommendations to the village board. 2, pass an inclusionary zoning ordinance, which I know you're looking at, to encourage and ultimately ensure that there is a meaningful, affordable housing allocation in all new residential and mixed-use construction for low-income households of all sizes, and give notice to those developers, including Westfield, whose projects are in the planning stages, that this should be factored into any proposals. The village should use its leverage when developers come and ask for approvals for all kinds of variances, for example, setbacks, building height, population density, parking spaces, and ratio of land building coverage. This allocation would be considered a minimum floor, not a ceiling. And 3, create a unified housing plan, not a worn-out patchwork of various fluctuating programs and annual grants, which would survey needs in the current on-the-ground situation, consider the best ways to support affordability, accessibility, and equity, and establish some stability and balance in housing availability at different income levels. Folks who live and work in Skokie should not be priced out, and those who are looking for affordable housing should not be kept out. Thank you so much for your leadership toward a just and equitable Skokie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, did you want to come up and speak? Okay. In light of Ms. Hector, oh, I'm sorry, did you come?
Yeah.
Okay,
Hello.
yes.
My name's Shelley Pat. I live at 4235 Payne Street. And I also just want to thank this commission for, all of the work that you have done on this really important issue. I just had a couple of suggestions, and one of them is I'm very happy to hear that you're advocating for a community survey. I'd encourage that a community survey also have very targeted outreach efforts with it to make sure that it's really reaching the people in Skokie who are most affected by this issue. I think this has been brought up before that even these meetings being at a certain time and a certain night might not have reached everyone, and also people in the community might not know, like if it's just like a little blurb in Skokie News saying, oh, here's a link to fill out a survey. I mean, we saw the the regular Skokie surveys and the sustainability surveys don't really get the traction that they deserve. And so I really hope some effort will be put out to, have this be outreach that will reach people in the schools, will reach communities of renters who are most affected by this issue, and also be in multiple languages so all people in the Skokie community can participate. The other thing I just wanted to comment on is the Goal D and the way, not what Goal D itself necessarily is, but the way it was presented. I was a little bit concerned about the language that we want to make sure that the affordable housing is safe, comfortable, and integrated into the community. I'm not sure if I got that quote down exactly, and linking it to a crime-free ordinance. And I just wanted to suggest that language like this and linking the issue of affordability to the issue of crime and the necessity to be crime-free perpetuates the myth that people who just happen to not be paid enough money by their employers or who are elderly or retired or disabled must somehow be a danger to our community. And that others people, and I urge this commission to just consider how the language may, however unintentionally, promote bias and discrimination towards people who unfortunately cannot afford to buy a single-family home. And I also urge the commission, as these topics come up and whatever your role is in continuing this conversation about housing, to consider that your role could also be to promote and educate to the public fair housing law, and that as discussions bring up concepts that are not just not within the values of Skokie, but are illegal according to state and federal law, to make it very clear that Skokie is not even going to consider discussion of housing discrimination. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is JJ Avaska. I live in the 8900 block of Forest View Road between Dempster and Church near McCormick Boulevard. I just want to thank the trustees, the Plan Commission, and the village staff for embarking on this process. It's very exciting. I grew up in Skokie in the 1980s and moved away after college, but then moved back in 2017 with my wife and 3 kids to be closer to the grandparents. And I firmly believe that Skokie can continue to be a wonderful, diverse, sustainable, resilient community. But I do think that such a future really depends on having a comprehensive vision for housing and a plan for housing. So I'm really excited by this. I think it needs to enable households of all shapes and sizes, incomes to find housing they can afford so that they can thrive. And importantly, I think that such a plan will also help to the long-term financial health of Skokie itself and the health of its tax base. I think that really depends on having a diverse housing stock that withstand the various shocks that might be coming down the road. I don't expect staff and trustees and the commission to come up with such a comprehensive plan in the next couple of weeks. Appreciate the extra meeting of input. But I do hope that what is produced in the coming weeks represents a strong first step and not the last step on the journey. Or to borrow a metaphor from earlier this evening, I hope it represents just packing the suitcases in the van and not the final destination. I'm really encouraged to see the goal of having all current workers in Skokie being able to find housing. I'd make the humble suggestion that the word affordable be included in that goal. I don't know if that was intentional or simply just an oversight. Because given that the median income for a Skokie worker is $42,000, but on average, Skokie's average rent would require a household earning more than $70,000 to be able to afford it. So there's a big gap that needs to be addressed. I think we also just need to be asking ourselves, whether it's with new developments, new policies, new ordinances, does this development, does this policy move us closer or farther away from the goals of current residents and current workers being able to afford housing here? Are there alternatives that could make a bigger contribution to those goals? Who is having their housing burden eased by a policy? Are we becoming a more accessible, welcoming community with the action we're taking? And one thing I would hope to see is that there would be a commitment to reform. I'm glad to see there's a commitment to reform the zoning policies and other ordinances. I hope that these will help encourage Skokie residents to take steps themselves to contribute to more affordable housing. While large new developments have their place in a comprehensive housing plan, I think we also need to encourage Skokie residents ourselves and micro developers to advance our own initiatives. This might mean adding an accessory dwelling unit. I'm really encouraged to see that's part of the draft so far. But I would also encourage you to create space for single-family homes to be converted into a 2-flat or a 3-flat that fit very well within the character of existing neighborhoods and can play a big part in the affordability and wealth creation over generations in Skokie. So thank you for the opportunity to offer this input. I have not been active in local issues thus far, but this is an issue that is important for me and I believe critical to the long-term health of our community. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out.
Hi, I'm Emi Yamauchi. I live here in downtown Skokie. I'm not a subject matter expert, so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about process. And that is, at the last village board meeting, I asked what the process was for like the information sharing when a project is proceeding through various stages to approval. And the mayor said sometimes it goes to appearance first and then to plan, sometimes it goes to plan and then appearance, or sometimes it just goes to plan. So what I would hope is when you do decide on a plan for affordable housing, that there's some sort of mechanism in there for letting people know what is happening. I appreciate the sign-up sheet, but I mean, there should be a public process that something goes through where there's stages where there can be input from neighbors, the public, whomever. So I would encourage you to add that to the recommendations. I also was kind of hoping that your goal C might have been upped to goal A or goal A2 or something, because I do think that a housing commission is absolutely essential. It's an immediate step that can be taken. And because I think the problem of affordable housing is so urgent, we really need a commission that is dedicated to housing and that will advocate on behalf of both landlords and tenants. I agreed with a previous speaker who was talking about the survey. It will be important to have it in various languages and to go out into the community to meet some of the renters and residents here who cannot make it into Village Hall or for various reasons may be hesitant to come into Village Hall. I also want to address what Mr. Schwartz said earlier, and that is, you know, we're all children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, whatever, of immigrants who most likely arrived here without a whole lot of money. And our socioeconomic differences exist, but I do not believe that in any way minimizes somebody's value as a human being. It should not discount their aspirations or their goals in life, and it certainly should not be a barrier to their moving or staying in Skokie. Many of the people who are in need of affordable housing are seniors. I'm a senior. They're on fixed incomes. They may be widows or widowers who are living off, you know, survivor's benefits of some sort. So I think we have to be very careful when we're talking about the socioeconomic differences and the demographics of who might be moving into or staying in Skokie, because as others have pointed out, most of us are already here, our roots are here, and we should be able to stay.
Okay.
Thank you.
May I just clarify something? On some of the larger projects we have, like, let's say the 8,000 project here in downtown Skokie, knowing that it's such a large project, we've actually asked the developer to have like an open house. And that's a process where they contact people in the area and they bring them in and show them their development, their ideas. Okay, if we feel generally, if the project is, that has gonna impact the neighborhood, we ask the developer to reach out to the people in the neighborhood. And we've done that many times.
Okay, what is the radius for how far they reach out into the neighborhood?
It depends, you know, whatever developer wants to do.
Okay. I mean, that's great. I live 2 blocks away. I don't know that we were reached out to. But was that because of, they reach out to gauge the impact or what the footprint might be, or whether
Generally,
there's?
just basically have an open house to show them what they're planning.
Okay, I don't know, because that 8,000 building took so long to go up, and there were all those
Yeah.
stops and
They
starts.
did have,
I
they
don't
did have
know.
an open house.
Okay, okay, well, that's good to know. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Alice Pappas. I live on Colmar near Oakton Park. Thank you so much for all of your work. It's very appreciated. I just wanted to speak to the suggestion to have a survey. I think that's great. I just wanted to add that as someone that works with refugees here in Skokie, I'm ashamed at how much I didn't know, and I'm wondering if we could have an education piece, whether it's through the Housing Commission or on Skokie's website. I think there's a lot of misperceptions about what the vocabulary means between Section 8, affordable housing, and I'm embarrassed about how much I've had to learn working with my refugee families, and I'm worried that the survey might not accurately reflect people's opinions without some education or available information. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name's Charlie Sachs. I live 7400 block of Tripp Avenue, and I'm thrilled about this whole conversation. This has been fascinating. I'm a member of the Sustainability Commission, and we've had these conversations about the impacts of sustainability on housing, and I've been participating in the discussions with the Skokie Neighbors for Housing Justice, and we've met with Edie Sutker, and we've met with Keith Robinson, and it's been fantastic to have these conversations, and I really appreciate it. I wanted to, and I think Gail articulated exactly where we are and what we're looking at in terms of from the community perspective of what we're proposing. But I wanted to address this issue of us versus them, and the whole idea of affordable housing being something for somebody else. I've lived in Skokie for 20 years, and I certainly don't consider myself someone in need of affordable housing. But the reality is, my kids go to schools, and those schools are maintained and taken care of by people who earn a hell of a lot less than I do. We go to grocery stores, and those stores are stocked and staffed by people who earn a lot less than I do. And if those people cannot afford to live in our community, that's not just a problem for them, it's a problem for me too. And I wanted to make that perfectly clear. This is not about somebody else, this is about us. And when we talk about housing subsidies, the question was raised, what's the socioeconomic characteristics of people who receive subsidies? Yes, there are direct subsidies through Section 8, but subsidies takes a lot of forms. That 8,000 North High Point project got a subsidy, right? Part of that development project was subsidized through public funds. The 8057 or 8047 Skokie Boulevard project recently received $1.7 million of public funds. That's a housing subsidy. If you've ever taken a mortgage interest tax deduction on your income tax, you have received a housing subsidy. So the socioeconomic characteristics of people who receive housing subsidies includes everybody in this room. I think we need to think about affordable housing differently. We cannot segregate the community. We cannot say there's some people that need affordable housing and other people that don't. The statistics show that affordable housing is an issue across a broad spectrum of incomes in the community, and it affects the viability and health of our entire community. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Judy Mendel. I'm sorry, I was just sort of in and out of the meeting, but I did hear you, Mr. Luke, refer to, again, that the schools don't want 3 bedrooms because of the influx of students. I work with a refugee family who is be desperate for a 3-bedroom. They're already in the school system. So, you know,
I just brought up one instant that I know of.
No, I know, but apparently if that's something that's really true with the schools, that I don't know.
I'm just saying that's a consideration for developers and for
Right,
people to
and
look at.
what I would say is I would love the village to say, whatever, not to reduce the number of 3 bedrooms, if that's what he was gonna do, anyway. Because there are people in our community who need 3
I
bedrooms.
understand that, absolutely. Anyone else? Good evening.
Hi, thanks everyone for being here. Wow, this is awesome. I don't normally get to get out because I have 2 young kids, so around the time of the meetings, I'm putting kids down, or dinner time. Really a lot of interesting stuff.
Could you give us your name, please?
Yeah, sorry. I'm Matthew Glebe. I live at 8111 Costner. I
Thank
grew
you.
up in Skokie, and I was able to come back here, thank God, because I could, thank God, somehow afford moving back here. So a few comments I kind of wanted to just bring out. I thought it'd be helpful for color. Very interesting. So the note about property taxes, I think that because of the reassessment, we're going to expect, you said it was 7,500 to 8,000. I'd anticipate that's got to shoot up because of the reassessment recently, right? Because
Well, we don't know that.
no, we don't know that, but you can kind of estimate. I think like because, yeah, they're not going
They're
down. They're
not
going to go
going
up,
down, yeah.
right? Okay, so I wanted to point that out because, you know, Skokie, most of Skokie is owned, right? It's a lot of single-family homes, and then you account for all like the disruptions that's happened, and we have this whole, you know, explosion of people wanting to buy
Well,
single-family
don't forget,
homes.
property taxes affect landlords too, because
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
they have to, they'll pass the tax on and rent.
That's right. And so, yeah, that's what I was going to say is that, like, we're going to probably anticipate not just, you know, homeowners experiencing a large increase, but if you own land and you rent that land, be it a house or multi-unit, you're probably just going to pass that along. So one idea I want to throw out there is, you know, if you live in Skokie and you're renting and you're already struggling to pay that, you know, odds are, I'm going to just take a guess. Let's say you live somewhere that's, you know, over 50 years old, because there's a good number of buildings that are over 50 years old. Your landlord's going to probably try to jack up your rent, and not because he's just a terrible person, but probably because he's got to pass on that large increase. I kind of wonder if we could design a program where we'd fix up certain units. I remember hearing that certain areas had just like tons of cockroaches. And
Well, that's a consideration, that's part of the
yeah.
maintaining our housing stock.
I saw in there, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the exact program, but it was something like providing funds to encourage landlords to kind of fix it. But I think it was so that they would provide affordable housing. I kind of wanted to propose that you like fix the rate or lower it, so you could promise like, hey, we're going to give you this money to fix up the apartment, and you cannot raise the rate other than X percent
Right,
or something.
We're in
Okay.
discussion about that.
Oh, that's great. Okay, that's awesome. Well, then I support that. I think that's great.
Thank you.
There was a few other points people said that I thought would be kind of interesting. I love your comments on school districts. I live in 73 and a half, and I mean, I go to the school district meetings because, again, I have young kids. And yeah, there's a lot of pressure because there's a lot of young kids coming in, and it's a great thing. But it probably makes sense when you're deciding kind of what projects to initiate, even affordable or non, to make sure that we're anticipating the impacts to school districts. I was going to recommend diversifying the location of any additional affordable housing in Skokie. I can kind of anticipate that it ends up, a lot of people want affordable housing, but they don't want it next to them for some reason. So I was just going to propose that making sure that we're intentional about geographically where we put those housing units. I love the idea of Westfield. I think that's awesome. One location I was wondering, the zoning area by where I live, I mean, there's a lot of not used properties, and I don't know, all Oakton and by McCormick, Maine, I kind of thought that'd be a good area to invest in, like, encourage a developer to come in. And
Well, that's part of our goal, is to look at some of the underused property.
yeah, I saw that one. Yeah, I saw that too. So thank you. I just want to be specific about it because we talked about not having the ability to expand, but if we have a lot of properties that, yeah, like there's nothing there, I definitely think that'd be great. Regarding the public open house, did we have a way to enforce kind of that they do an open house? What happens if
At this
they
point,
come
we
in?
just really suggest.
Could that be, to kind of add on to what?
Actually, we strongly suggest.
Yeah, strongly, sure. Is there a way we could kind of maybe propose like formalizing that process a little bit, so
Well,
that, because I let's say I'm a developer, right?
Well,
And-
we take it on a project-by-project basis. I mean, some
Okay. Yeah,
projects
no,
could-
and I get that. I mean, you guys are putting tons of time into this. I mean, we defer to trust you. But if you've told someone, you told me a developer, hey, you need to go do this outreach, and I go, sure thing, and then I walk around the street and I throw flyers on the ground, and then I say, I did my outreach, I'm going to hold my event,
We kind of hold them to the, put
Okay.
their feet to the fire.
Okay, yeah, all I guess I'm saying is if there's, I think what the individual was throwing out, I'd throw on maybe like a formal process that we articulate. Like, we kind of expect this, and just so the public knows, hey, you're not going to be surprised by someone a block away building something. You will know about it. And if you don't, that means that they didn't do their job. So that was because she didn't know, and she lives 2 blocks away. I wanted to ask this question just to understand kind of where we can move the needle. 19-ish% is affordable, right? If we required that literally like 100% of all new developments had to be affordable, that was a 30% of the, let's say I think the median income was $33,000, right? So I kind of wanted to know, like, what would that do, and would that meet our goals? Can we thread the needle? Can we
You mean
push it that much?
if we force the developer to make 100% of their units affordable,
Yeah, what would happen?
They
Kinda
would
like
walk.
theoretically. Huh?
they would walk away.
No, sure, but I guess what I'm also trying to point out here is like, where is that? I'm trying to establish boundaries. 0% versus 100%. Like, where is
We're
that
trying to
median?
establish that.
Okay.
But if you're thinking that we can force the developer.
No, I'm not thinking that.
Oh,
I'm
no,
trying to think
we
from like a
can't do that.
population growth perspective, and like from just general. Can we even grow? Forget, I guess, affordable. Can we even just in some of these new projects, if you just had an explosion of growth in certain areas, can the village sustain that now? Since we're seeing so much growth already, and it's
Well,
great.
We're looking
but-
for a happy medium here.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, admittedly, the developer wants to make money. That's what he's here for. I mean, that's the honest truth.
Yeah, no, and I know that too. I think that's not bad. And then the last thing I just wanted to ask, you had mentioned about exemptions, and I thought that was a really good point to encourage. If homes have improvements to have seniors live in there, are those enabled? And this might be outside of your guys' understanding of this, but can they get the senior exemption? Do they qualify? And could that be abused? Could that be something we encourage? Because if like, I don't know, if I want to have my grandmother live with me.
Part of our sustainability is to look for funds that are available to the public. for-
Yeah,
for
I
stuff
guess
like that.
what I'm proposing is to the extent that we can encourage an adjustment to the exemptions or talk to Illinois or whatever.
Well,
if-
we can encourage, but.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
this is-
or clarify, like if I'm a homeowner and I'm always going to my grandmother or mother's house and taking care of them, and we're talking about handling.
Well, if you want to do something like that, you'd have to talk to your state representatives.
No, sure. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Tal Pendo. It's clear from tonight's and the prior 2 village meetings on affordable housing that this is an important and complex issue that requires a multifaceted plan and strategy to address. The focus of my comments tonight is accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. ADUs represent an already existing supply of healthy housing within the village, which could be made available if the village followed the likes of Oak Park, the city of Chicago, and Evanston in permitting ADUs and removing parking requirements that could make the availability of such ADUs impossible. I support including ADUs as part of the village's plan to provide housing opportunities to aging, multi-generational, middle and lower income residents. I thank the village for all of its hard work in tackling this complex issue.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Anyone else, please?
Samina Hussein. I just had a quick question. I was reading an article about the structure going up on Skokie Boulevard, close to the Skokie Swift. And it said that there was only three units in there
The
out
one
of
on Niles
56.
Center Road?
No, I think it's Skokie Boulevard. It was in the.
Oh,
trip-
yeah, okay.
There was only 3 units in there that was going to be deemed affordable out of 56.
Right.
Was that something that
I'm
was
not sure how
decided a
many
long time ago, or?
Well, they came in, there's no ordinance in effect now to force them to do anything. They're voluntarily,
Okay.
you know, to do this.
So moving forward, if the plan commission is going to be recommending something to the board, it'll be like an ordinance?
Yes,
Okay. Okay, thank you.
thank you. Anyone else to speak? Okay, I'd like to go back to our discussion in goal C as far as inclusionary housing. And I think we needed to probably make more comment on that. And I believe Johanna is, has more insight.
Well, I guess, I mean, sort of twofold next steps. If we have a meeting on March 16th, if I return with additional updated document, feedback on where we want to see the goals, if there's revisions, but also, you know, if I believe the board will be looking to get some feedback on an inclusionary housing ordinance. The plan commission has reviewed a number of developments. We've been in process. We've seen a developer just propose voluntarily 5% of the units at 80% of AMI. There's a table in the materials for tonight that show different communities and what they've done with inclusionary housing. Some feedback. I don't think we're going to be asked to provide the specific parameters, but give some feedback to the board so they can have a starting point to discuss when they get this recommendation from the plan commission.
Very good. Everybody in agreement on that? Any questions, comments? Okay. All right. Any other business before the board?
I'm sorry, I guess I'm just looking at a percentage or some, not just some parameter, not just so that we have them, but I'm looking for the appetite for, do we want 5% is what we've seen? Is 10%, 7%? What area median income? I mean, what looks good? Did some community have some piece of their ordinance that looked good? Fee and lieu. I'm in the city, but I want to get in the ballpark.
Exactly. I mean, looking at different ordinances, you know, for communities surrounding us, it's not a one ordinance to fit all. I mean, it's, in their case, it works for them. It may not work for us. So we could probably cherry pick ideas from those ordinances and craft one into ours. How's that? I mean,
I just need to know where we're starting from. I don't want to presuppose what the commission might want to do.
no, I think we're moving in the right direction. As far as percentage, yeah, it's gonna be difficult, but I think we can come up with something. Go ahead.
I need if I'm gonna return something, we're gonna have materials posted next week. Yeah.
Okay, so you need a percentage.
I don't need I just need to, what look good in other communities?
What do you, commissioners? You have any
You're talking
idea?
about 5%, 80% AMI, these ratios that you're looking for specifically.
I don't need you guys to
I'll
pick
be
out,
honest
just
with
give me
you. I'm
feedback.
not sure I'm there. And I'll tell you why I'm not there, and that's why I think we do need the survey. And I think we've now committed to bringing a resolution to this and a final conclusion at the March meeting, and I don't know that I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
We need to have the community's input. So when you say a recommendation and we add it to E, that's fine, but then Johanna has the job of putting together a plan and wants to get some guidance so that she's not then having to go back and redo things. And I can certainly understand that. Again, the purpose of a community survey is to get a wide swath of opinions on this subject, find out the questions that we need related to housing demand, our housing stock, these critical questions that we need to know from the whole community, but we're kind of lining ourselves up to just bring this policy forward at the next meeting.
I just want to say too, it seems like what's been missing from the discussion is although we all agree that we want to do something positive relative to affordable housing, but it's a balancing act between squashing economic development, which is critical for the continued growth and vitality of the community, and at the same time contributing or accomplishing what we want on economic development. You're asking us, you know, forgive me, but you're kind of asking us to guess or just give a fill-in number where I don't even know how we calculate that, because it's got to be unique to our community relative to what's an appropriate, you know, margin for a developer, what's an appropriate rent for a 1-2 bedroom apartment, things like that. I don't know how you calculate all that, but that's something that somewhere or another we've got to bring someone in that can help us do that calculation for our community in terms of what's the right percentage.
So
I don't
once,
think we should be guessing.
once upon a time, I worked in procurement, and there was a phrase that I learned that I loved. And the phrase is use best efforts. I would suggest that the instruction that we provide the staff, as they have continued to engage on this issue even before these proceedings, that they continue to use their best efforts to evaluate each individual case and to make a determination as to the appropriate levels of affordable housing that could be considered in each individual case as discussed, negotiated with, and determined by those developers. I say that because I believe strongly that we can operate on parallel tracks until and at which point those tracks merge, meaning we are working to try to identify and define what ultimately will be our goals, what ultimately we will recommend, but simultaneously the business of the village needs to continue. So my suggestion is, while we continue to evaluate, educate ourselves, and pursue those goals, the business of the village will continue. And in the middle is the staff. Understandably, that is a difficult burden to place on staff, but use the language that staff will use their best efforts to try to make determinations on each and every individual case, and will make their recommendations through the existing process. Is that not fair and reasonable?
That's fair and reasonable.
My guess is that, and perhaps we're being, and I agree with everything you're saying, but maybe we're being burdensome to staff. And my thought is that there's probably consulting companies around this country that have done this for communities and help them march through this and slog through it, sure, for a fee, but then they come up with something that is not putting that burden totally on staff who's not done this before, who might be able to help us come up with those magic numbers.
I fully support that.
I would argue that I believe staff does have that experience. If I'm not mistaken, Johanna has actually done this policy before in a community of 20,000 greater residents than this community, first. Second, I don't mean to harp on this, but you know, she's looking for some guidance related to the percentage, the AMI numbers, and I think we can work through that. But again, without this survey, we're making decisions to bring forth to the board, and we're not going to have the entire village's thoughts. So if that needs to be a motion, I'll motion. But when you ask about adding it to the E, that it would be a recommendation, again, then that's going to have to fall on the trustees then to evaluate that survey. And to me, we're putting a little bit the cart before the horse. I'd like to see us be able to review that, continue to work with staff. I agree with Peter. They use their best work. We've already seen developments come through as this discussion has started, and we've worked with developers to get some affordable housing. But we need a permanent plan. We need a plan. We need more process.
Okay. Commissioner Woolsey?
No, nothing further.
Owing to that fact, you know, I agree with you, you know, Commissioner Matei, and I agree with you, Commissioner Woolsey, and I feel that perhaps we should ask the staff to formulate somewhere in the area of 10 to 15% for now.
So
As far as
that was what I was going to suggest, is a range.
Right.
But again, I would suggest that if you say 10 to 15%, I would probably say 5 to 20, right? Like, why constrict the range? In my mind, again, that gives staff the flexibility to make a determination based on what the merits of an individual case present.
Mhm.
Now, again, I understand, as was re-articulated, that the broader that range, the more burdensome that is on staff. But if we've acknowledged that we have additional work to do, I think unnecessarily constraining ourselves is also burdensome.
Well, honestly, I'm hearing a little agreement. It's sort of like now we're concerned with what furniture we're putting in different rooms. We've agreed kind of on the house where it sounds like there's interest in this. I'll give you feedback. Sitting with developers, one of the first things when I say the Village of Skokie would like to see affordable housing here, they say, well, you have no law in the books to require us. And I can't go back to my seller and negotiate that because they know that. So it puts, for all of us who've negotiated any kind of real estate, that puts the buyer and all of us in a precarious position. But what I think I'm hearing here is there's interest in some kind of inclusionary, where there's not, I'm not hearing dissent on that. And I'm hearing that we want to understand greater need, and I think the income piece is a little bit of a challenge if we don't understand the financial need here in the community. I think we have gotten some good information from partners like CMAP, Cook County. Those organizations, and IDA, staff has started to talk to the Illinois Housing Development Authority on options and opportunities for better understanding what we need in terms of our housing. So we can, I think I feel comfortable writing something for the next round that speaks to the need for this item. And so in terms of, if you would indulge me for one more round in thinking about on-site versus fee in lieu and that, because one of the other things that often comes up in those conversations is developers just want to pay a fee. And for some developments, I would argue that that is appropriate, because on-site for certain types of development that might have, for example, I've said this before, townhomes could have higher association fees, which make it harder to maintain and control the cost. We've seen that as an example where a fee in lieu is more appropriate, but apartment buildings might be more appropriate for required on-site. So if there's any feedback that I can get on the fee in lieu versus on-site, then I can write something, I think, very general that you all can review at the next meeting.
Fee in lieu and or incentivize behaviors, right? I mean,
I'm in favor of fee for lieu, but what the problem is that what we're having is establishing a range, and we're lay people. I I never talked to a developer. I don't know what they're thinking. I think Erica may have some experience here, but I really don't know how far we could push them or how far they're willing to go. So if I say 15, 20%, would that make a developer walk away? I don't know.
And again, Paul, it just seems like we're throwing numbers out there.
Well,
I
essentially,
don't
that's
mean
what
to
we're
stem you
doing.
the I don't mean to
have
stem
no
you the
experience working
discussion,
with
but
developers.
I'm curious, Joanna, kind of what's your pipeline right now? What kind of projects do you see in the next 60 to 90 days coming to us? And I know these projects, and frankly, if you don't realize this, a development can take years, right? They've got to go put all the whole plan together. They got to cash flow it. They got to get financing. That these projects don't just happen like this. Bigger the project, the longer it takes. With that said, and wanting to get this done, what do you see if we were to delay that into April? We have case in March 16th meeting, and we're going to do this issue. I'm not sure we're going to get all that done in a night, and if it is, probably going to be a late night. So I would recommend that we pull back on, we're going to make a final determination in this next meeting. Let's get at least an outline of where you believe, based on what you've seen in the local areas, And unless you feel like there's concern dealing with an existing current project in front of you where this is going to be prohibitive and we're gonna miss an opportunity. So I'd ask kind of what are you seeing coming into the next 90 to 120 days?
Well, I think a lot of I'm not seeing anything that we don't already know about. And even then, I'm not sure what might come in. You know, we had the Nile Center Road project, which we just moved forward to the board, and then 4600 Main went to Appearance Commission. They were given feedback to revise their proposal, and my understanding is from talking to them, they're working on that. So going forward, I think developers are also looking to see what the Village of Skokie does too. It's sort of a, you know, looking and trying to figure out where are we going with this? And but because a lot of the developers that do come to Skokie are already working in a lot of these other communities, we're at least not the first out of the box on proposing something. So this is not a deal breaker, but the comments are well taken and certainly appropriate in terms of we have to make sure we do something so we don't discourage development and don't make it prohibitive, because the developers in most cases are not receiving some additional subsidy. I think the Niles Center Road project is a wonderful demonstration project because we greatly reduced their parking. They happen to be next to a parking lot, so that worked out. But if they had potentially had to buy and build that parking, that project might not be feasible financially.
If you had to pay the per spot missing from the 50-plus parking spots, that deal doesn't happen.
Right.
So it's a good example of how 5% and 80%, which is the first project we've been able to get to that level, was able to happen because we did it. So we're seeing the incremental steps, but as we continue to evolve and I like the road trip analogy. I like road trips as well. That continues to help build our case as we move forward.
Road trips and houses.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I think, Johanna, what the Commissioner's trying to ask of you is to help us along and give us examples of what you think would be a workable situation based on your experience.
No pressure.
I know, no pressure here, but then again, we don't.
And one thing, could you, sorry, Jeff, could you outline Evanston's, just broadly for us? When I say that, I mean, just pertaining to the AMI they use, the percentage, I'd be curious. I don't have the information, so if that's something that could be shared with us.
Sure, the table is in here with some, it's a little more complex because we made them, the fee and lieu closer to train stations was higher than FAR because we valued those units as more. 5% was required on site. The additional portion you could put on, there were ways to get zoning incentives so you could increase your density in bulk, and then there was also ways, it got a little more complicated in the latest iteration, but it in some ways developers liked those density those bonuses because they were able to put more units in their site, and so that by the time it had been a few years that the inclusionary housing ordinance had been on the books, it had sort of made its way backstream into the market where the market had adjusted and felt okay about this. They didn't blink when they read it.
That's a good point, because I'm not sure scale is necessarily the same in Skokie in general as it has in Evanston, which has got much higher density.
Okay. Okay,
I'm still feeling like we're being pressured to artificially come up with something for the board and put Johanna in that position, as opposed to going back, having Johanna or Paul, you as the chairman, go back and say, hey, you kind of gave us a deadline, but we've realized that this is bigger than we thought it is, and we need to learn more from a research study in terms of what the community is seeing, maybe more research, whether it's using an outside source or Johanna's background, in terms of what the market will bear, in terms of what the sweet spot is, in terms of where some of these numbers come out. And we're not in a position to just start offering these up right now.
I guess I just have a procedural question, because I'm not even sure what we're talking about. If we're talking about numbers and percentages, none of that is enforceable until and in which it has been passed through ordinance. we don't have the authority to promulgate rules and regulations, so that wouldn't be binding either. So if we put forward a percentage at this point, it's still simply a suggestion, which has no more power or authority than a suggestion that is made outside of the confines of this conversation. So I'm just not entirely sure what we're even debating at this point.
Well, that's why I feel that we could start at a base of 10 to 15%, figuring, work from there.
If we're just gonna make up numbers and we get votes, I would vote no against that.
Well, I'm not making up numbers, I'm just looking at numbers that
But
currently
Placeholder numbers put in reports tend to somehow become reality over time. Let's be honest, we're not ready to present some numbers. The range should be 0 to 0 until we do some research.
Okay. Do we have any commissioners? How do you feel about that?
I agree with Jeff. We need more time to research and have more data. We need to go with the survey and all this before we come up with suggestion to the board trustee.
As far as numbers go?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So how about I return, we return on the 16th, and I will rework goal
We'll
E.
we'll bring this up for discussion again on the 16th. Maybe by then we'll get more information. Okay?
Would you like me
Peter?
to move goal E to goal A?
Yeah,
And
that was probably,
is that,
I think what would be requested would be some document, some formal report that evaluates the neighboring community. That, again, we've had a table previously that reiterates what those ranges are
and
for point of
a little bit-
comparison.
A little bit of what the market is, I think. Okay? Everybody in agreement? No need to vote, but. Okay,
There's
so
nothing to
that's,
vote on.
that's your assignment for next meeting. Yeah, very easy. Okay. All right. Without any further input from the commissioners, I'm sorry. Yes, we need to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes, Jeff? Do we have a second? Second. Thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes from the last meeting, say aye. Aye. Minutes have been approved. Thank you, Marlene. Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for coming. And again, we're going to continue this discussion till March 16th. I hope to see you here then. Have a good evening and have a good weekend.